Should the Denver Broncos sign a former division rival to replace the injured K'Wan Williams? So, the Denver Broncos got some really crappy news earlier today when it was announced that starting nickel K'Wan Williams is going to be going on injured reserve with a foot injury. Now, one report that came out said that Williams is slated to miss 6 to 8 weeks, but Mike Kliss, Broncos insider, also said that season-ending IR is not off the table for K'Wan Williams. It all depends on how his surgery goes. If the surgery goes well, then he may only miss half of the regular season, but if the surgery goes poorly, then there's a strong chance that we may not see K'Wan Williams at all this season. Either way, the Denver Broncos are going to need to find somebody to step up in that role while K'Wan is gone. I talked about in my earlier video today how it feels like Essane Bassey is definitely ready to step in a more elevated role on this defense as a nickel. He's looked really good throughout training camp in the preseason. Hasn't been perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but it's definitely clear that Essane Bassey is ready to take on a bit more of an elevated role this year. But there is still the question if the Denver Broncos could want to look outside the building to potentially solve their woes at nickel. Maybe they don't trust Essane Bassey as a full-time starter, so there are a couple of options out there on the free agent market. One that actually just became available today that we're going to talk about in this video, and that is Desmond King. Desmond King is a former 5th-round pick of the Chargers back in 2017, so he's somebody that Denver is somewhat familiar with. He spent the first 4 seasons of his career with the Chargers. He then spent 1 year with the Tennessee Titans, and ever since 2021, he has been on the Texans up until earlier today when he got released. So if we come over here and take a look at Desmond King's advanced stats, he had 7 pass breakups in 2022. He also had 2 interceptions and 1 interception dropped. He had 88 total tackles, but he also had 19 broken or missed tackles, or a 17.8% missed tackle percentage. He also had a career low deserved catch percentage last year. The lower the number this is, the better. So essentially, this is if a certain defender is covering this route, this is, did you allow the catch or did you allow the receiver to get in position to make the catch while you were covering? So this is one stat where you can kind of grade coverage a little bit. And so he had one of his better years, but as you can see before that, his deserved catch percentage was definitely a lot higher than you'd want it to be. So that's something that is definitely worth monitoring as far as Desmond King is concerned. Now, King actually does have some other versatility to his game. His main calling card in the NFL has actually really been as a return specialist. Over the course of his career, he's returned 101 punts and 63 kickoffs. He's had 2 punt return touchdowns. He hasn't had any kickoff return touchdowns. But last year, he returned 33 punts for the Texans for 309 yards, averaging 9.4 yards per return. So the Denver Broncos, I don't feel like need any big help at the return game. We've got Marvin Mims to help fill that role, and maybe even Tremon Smith if the Broncos decide to keep him. Ironically enough, Tremon Smith, another former Texan. But I also feel like if the Denver Broncos want to go a little bit more towards the veteran route at nickel, they should at least give Desmond King a call. I don't necessarily know if Desmond King is going to want to take the opportunity that may present itself here in Denver, because there may be some other opportunities for him where he has a chance to start. I feel like if the Broncos do bring in a veteran nickel, it's not going to be as a starter. I feel like Essane Bassey would still start, but that veteran player would be basically like a backup insurance policy for Essane Bassey. I feel like another option that could be a little bit more realistic just because of his history with the Denver Broncos is Bryce Callahan. Obviously, he's more of a Vic Fangio guy, but we are going to be running a lot of the same defensive concepts that we've run for the past several years here in Denver. Vance Joseph, although he's certainly going to be implementing his own flavor to things, he's going to keep a lot of those Vic Fangio concepts around. So that could aid in the transition for a guy like Bryce Callahan if he were to come back to Denver. He spent last season with the Los Angeles Chargers and looked really good for them in that same defensive scheme. So that could be an option for the Denver Broncos. I feel like that's probably a more realistic option than Desmond King is, but I feel like since Desmond King did recently get cut and the Denver Broncos do potentially have a void at nickel, that we needed to at least address the topic and see if Desmond King makes any sense for the Denver Broncos. I feel like he's probably going to be a little bit too far out of Denver's price range because Desmond King is still a quality starting nickel in the NFL, and quite frankly, those kind of players are pretty hard to come by. So I feel like Desmond King is going to get monetary value for not only his abilities as a defensive back, but also as a return specialist, where obviously that's another position where guys are kind of few and far between. So I feel like there's going to be a much more elevated role for Desmond King available out there and more money available out there for him than what the Denver Broncos can and are willing to offer him. So at the end of the day, I just don't feel like Desmond King makes a whole lot of sense for the Denver Broncos. If they are going to bring in a veteran nickel, I feel like Bryce Callahan makes the most sense, but I really feel like the Denver Broncos may just be confident in staying where they are at the nickel position. They've got Essane Bassey and they've got Jaquan McMillan, who, as far as Jaquan's concerned, he's mostly worked at boundary this offseason, but he has showcased that he can play nickel. So we've got good depth there, I feel like. Again, Essane Bassey's not a superstar out there, but it's not like Bryce Callahan or Desmond King are either at this point in their career. I feel like I'd much rather develop the young player with potential in Essane Bassey because he's really showcased that he's taken his game to the next level this year. I feel like his 3 interceptions are a little bit misleading in the preseason. 2 of them were just bad plays by the offense where Essane Bassey was where he needed to be to make the play. But in that 3rd interception that he had in the Rams game, that was just a really great awareness play by him. So hats off there, but I feel like he's made some good PBUs. He's been a little up and down in coverage somewhat, but I do feel like Essane Bassey has showcased enough to give me confidence in him as our starting nickel this year. So again, guys, I just don't think Desmond King makes any sense for the Denver Broncos. But I'm curious, Broncos country, do you guys disagree with me? Do you feel like Desmond King would be a good fit for the Denver Broncos? Drop those comments down below, guys. I would love to hear your thoughts as always. Be sure to leave a like on this video as well as subscribe and ring the bell so these videos appear in your notification feed. I would really appreciate it, guys. Those are 2 free and easy ways to show your support. It helps tell YouTube's algorithm to push us out and helps us get seen by more and more members of Broncos country just like you and me. And until next time, guys, this has been another episode of Denver Broncos Syndicate. I am your host, Gage Madrid, saying peace out.